All right, good Monday afternoon, everyone. Thanks for stopping by for a check of your forecast. Hope everyone's out there enjoying the day today. It is a windy one here across the Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle. Kind of expected that. Late last week, we talked about those fire weather concerns for today being elevated for sure, probably getting close to some critical fire concerns. The good news is we haven't seen very many big fires pop up today. There's been a couple of blips on satellite where maybe a hot spot or two has developed from maybe a smaller fire, but it really has been a quieter afternoon. And our winds are starting to die down as that low pressure center starts to move up into Nebraska, well away from the panhandles. So our winds are going to gradually decrease through the rest of this afternoon, hopefully leading to some more comfortable conditions and less of that fire weather concern. But again, looking at radar and water vapor imagery, you can see there's that first upper level low that continues to turn over the north central plains. You can see some rain starting to fill in across portions of South Dakota, all the way down through Iowa. This is expected to kind of fill in as we get further into tonight. You can see a couple of isolated storms along the frontal boundary as that system moves away from the region. The one we're watching currently for our next weather maker is coming down the coast of California right now as another closed upper level low. This is going to be the cutoff low that we think is going to provide that increased chance for rain on Thursday. And it's becoming more and more likely that we see rain on Thursday based off of what models are starting to hone in on. So we're going to break that down for you as well. Let's go take a look real quick down in Childress. It is the 17th of November. We are approaching 4 p.m. You can see there at 3:56 in the bottom right-hand corner. But again, beautiful weather outside, aside from the windier conditions that we had in the first half of today. Temperatures outside, a lot of 70s right now, 72 here in Amarillo, 73 in Borger. Canadian has topped out at 76. Those winds are still out of the west around 15 to 25, but we are starting to lose some of that high-end wind gust potential, and that's something that will continue to subside overnight tonight. Let's go ahead and run through the next 2 days. Very subtle front comes through tonight. We don't expect it to change our temperatures much, if any, for tomorrow, but it will keep those winds out of the north in the first half of the day before we start seeing some of that return flow later in the evening. Moving into Wednesday, we're going to start seeing a lot of those increased clouds, especially over in the western half of our area. Maybe a sprinkle or two over in some isolated areas. Now, what we're watching again is really going to come through, we think, on Thursday with this close low. You can start to see some of the effects of that rainfall down in central and southeast New Mexico. This plume of moisture and ascent aloft is going to surge to the north and east, and we think that this is going to fill in and really kind of overspread much of our area as we move through Thursday. That's the window that we're really looking at, specifically Thursday from lunchtime until probably late that evening. It's just going to be due to where the trough is expected to set up. You can see that closed low in between Phoenix and Las Vegas by Thursday afternoon. That's going to help allow for some of that moisture to be pulled in from the Gulf, and this is going to take on almost a negative tilt where you see the base of this trough kind of swings out ahead of the top of the trough. And that negative tilt is usually a very good indicator that we're going to have some good moisture to be fetched into that system. That's just going to allow for some better moisture to be pulled in, and that usually helps us with our rain chances here in the high plains. When these systems are positively tilted, where you see the northern side of that trough swing across the country well ahead of the base of it, that is a very minimal moisture return. It's usually a big struggle for us to get some precipitation with those, and those usually allow for the dry line to race east very quickly. But these closed lows that are negatively tilted usually have a better opportunity to bring in some moisture for us. And you can see there's another system behind it as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at tracking lifts. Right now, I'm sure you guys have heard maybe the chance for some severe weather across portions of South Texas and maybe even the Arklatex area. While I think thunderstorms are going to be possible for us on Thursday, I don't think we'll have much of an issue for severe weather potential. We might get borderline marginal concerns towards Childress and Paducah, where maybe a storm or two briefly has the opportunity to become severe, but a lot of these are just going to be general showers and thunderstorms. There's not really a big concern for us from the severe weather side of things. Now, as we move into Friday, that low starts to push east, and you can see again the better instability is really in the southeast portion of the country, and we get a lot of the sinking air aloft as we move into the weekend. But there is another closed low that is forecast to move into the desert southwest early next week. Again, the exact track of that one will also be key on if we can see some additional moisture chances moving into next Monday. Again, here's your outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. This is for Wednesday, just the general outlook for us, just general thunderstorms expected. The marginal risk staying just outside of Cottle County for Wednesday, and probably similar conditions expected on Thursday. We may have a bigger swath of the area under the general thunderstorm risk, but I don't know if we'll get much past maybe a marginal concern, and that really will be favored for the extreme southeast panhandle towards Childress and Paducah, not necessarily for us in the Amarillo area. So here's our probabilities for a half inch of rain on Thursday. This is what we would probably consider to be a meaningful amount of moisture. Certainly not a deluge or a gully washer, but it is going to be enough to put some moisture back into the subsoil and into the dirt that's been very dry as of late. That wind certainly kicked up a fair bit of dust late this morning and into the early afternoon hours. So Amarillo sitting right at about a 50-50 shot for a half inch of rain with this system on Thursday. Those higher totals we still think should favor the southeast. There may be some pockets where we do get some higher amounts out in the western panhandle. I just don't think it's going to be widespread where there's a lot of people seeing more than a half inch of rain out there. That coverage is going to be a lot more spotty when you start talking about those half inch to 1 inch totals. But the further southeast you go, generally speaking, the better that your opportunity is going to be to pass that half inch threshold that we were just using there. You can see this is the Weather Prediction Center's outlook. They've got a pretty good swath of some half inch to 1 inch totals in the southeast panhandle. They do have a small part of the southwest panhandle in right around that half inch range. But a lot of us are probably going to swing anywhere from a quarter inch to about 3/4 of an inch of rainfall out of this system. It's not going to be a big event, but it will be a meaningful amount. And we are starting to see some increased drought conditions with us being dry over the last 6-7 weeks. And it has been very hot as well. So moisture will be a good thing for us. Just taking a quick look at kind of where we've been pacing for November's average temperatures through the first half of the month, really through the first 16 days. It's up there. We are in either the solidly second place or tied for second place at all three climate sites here in the Texas Panhandle for warmest on record, at least the warmest starts to November. It certainly has been a very hot first half of the month. There are some signs that this is going to change, though, as we move into the second part of November. Now, I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of things, and this could even transpire into December as well as we continue to talk about this. We're looking at the Arctic Oscillation. This is basically just indicating maybe some cold air intrusion further into the continental U.S. You can see we start to trend up as we move into this weekend. I know we've been talking about the rain chance for Thursday. If we do inevitably see some more moisture chances early next week, the oscillation still is, I mean, it's trending negative by Monday, but still it does look like we are going to be probably pretty warm with that system as well. And so I would expect us to likely lean heavily in the favor of rainfall rather than winter weather with that system. But you can see we do go negative again. And this is overlapped with a negative PNA. We've been talking about a positive PNA pattern for the last couple of weeks, which has allowed that big ridge to build over the western half of the country and a big trough out east towards New England, the Carolinas, in the Midwest. That usually just means that we get these dry frontal passages. All the cold air stays kind of bottled up in the Great Lakes area. Can sometimes get a backdoor front in here where we do get some pretty cold air, but we are expecting a more lean towards negative conditions for our PNA based off of ensembles. We'll go ahead and jump over to the GFS. It's not as convinced that we'll be over into a negative PNA pattern moving into the end of November and early December, but that may keep that door open for storm systems through those troughs to sweep across the desert Southwest. Should we, continue to stay in almost negative PNA pattern? You can kind of see that dip on Wednesday, Thursday, where we have that trough swinging across the area. You can see another notable dip there as we get into Saturday, Sunday, and then we just kind of continue that gradual trend downhill towards a negative oscillation. The Canadian is sold that we're going to go into a negative PNA pattern by the end of November, which would potentially lead towards some more active storm systems for us. So that's something to keep an eye on. Another thing that we need to keep an eye on is the potential stratospheric warming event. What this is just, we're talking about way up in the atmosphere. I mean, almost to the top of the atmosphere. This isn't necessarily where we'd see thunderstorm development, but this can lead to some disruptions in the jet stream. which is just underneath the stratosphere. But you can see that we do expect some warmer anomalies to really build in across the northern hemisphere, right over the North Pole. You can see a pretty good negative anomaly there over in Siberia and Russia. But we're really kind of centered over Greenland and kind of over the northern side of the Canadian provinces, close to what would be considered the North Pole. We get some really above average temperatures. Now we're talking about late November, the 26th, 27th, 28th, and we eventually get potentially what you would call cross polar flow. So you've got low pressure here, high pressure here. So you've got flow coming in just like this. This is what you would consider to be cross polar flow. This allows for disruptions in the jet stream. It basically weakens the polar vortex. It really just allows all that cold air to have the opportunity to kind of spill into some lower latitudes as we move into that 15 to 30-day window after we see these stratospheric warming events. But you can still see still some kind of cross polar flow to some degree. Definitely an above average anomaly centered over the North Pole before we maybe start seeing another low start to move across Siberia, and we'll see how that translates into December. But definitely a very strong signal for what would be considered a stratospheric warming event. So that is something that we'll also have to keep an eye on. When that happens, that usually allows for several mid-latitude cyclones to allow for a lot of that cold air bottled up in the northern latitudes to spill further south. That usually is a 15 to 30-day delay, but definitely think that maybe December, especially the second half of December, we could be talking about maybe some really cold air intruding into the continental U.S. at some point. It doesn't guarantee it, but there's usually a very good indicator. That's a pretty strong teleconnection with those two things. That cold air is going to get spilled south, whether it's in Russia or it's here. If we get cross polar flow, it usually just means both the Siberia and North America are going to deal with some cold air intrusion. And a lot of that usually is in the plains and in the Midwest rather than over the interior mountains over in the West Coast and things like that. So, something to think about. I know it's been hot, I know it's been dry, but it does look like maybe a possible flip to a different kind of weather pattern moving out of November and into December. And it looks like maybe we'll finally start feeling more like December in December, more like winter in December, something to look forward to. That's all we have for you today. This is your 7-day forecast. We've got an 80 pop for rainfall here in Amarillo on Thursday. Again, there's about a 50% chance we get to a half inch of rain. The chance to get to an inch of rainfall, though, decreases drastically here in the panhandles. We're not expecting a huge deluge of water, but it should be a meaningful amount, and it's going to help maybe keep that fire weather concern at bay for a little bit longer, as we have been dry. Grass is going dormant, and we are starting to move into the winter months, and inevitably will lead to some fire concerns as we continue to dry things out. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to hit that like button. Make sure to tune in tonight at 5, 6, and 10 o'clock as well, and we'll see you then.